It's time to turn your daydream into your dream job. Wix gives you the power to turn your passion into a moneymaker with a website that fits your unique vision and drives you towards your goals. Let your ideas flow with AI tools that guide you, but give you full control and flexibility. Manage your business from one dashboard and keep it growing with built-in marketing features. Get everything you need to turn your part-time passion into a full-time business. Go to Wix.com.
Now more than ever, Lowe's knows you don't just want a low price, you want the lowest price. And with our lowest price guarantee, you can count on us for competitive prices on all your home improvement projects. If you find a qualifying lower price somewhere else on the same item, we'll match it. Lowe's, we help, you save. Price match applies to same item, current price at qualifying retailers. Exclusions and terms apply. Learn how we'll match price at lowes.com/lowest price guarantee.
During KFC $10 Tuesdays, you can get a bucket of golden brown juicy chicken plus 4 dipping sauces for just $10. Or see what $10 gets you at a coffee shop.
Okay, now before you enjoy this coffee, let me explain the process each individual.
Anyway, enjoy KFC $10 Tuesdays. Get your choice of 8 original recipe tenders with 4 sauces or classic fried chicken, both seasoned with our secret blend of 11 herbs and spices. Only at KFC. It's finger-licking good. Prices and participation vary while supplies last. Taxes, tips, and fees extra.
Hey everyone, today I have a treat for you. A sneak peek preview of my new book, Dinner with King Tut, which comes out July 8th. The book is about experimental archaeology, scientists recreating things from the past, whether it be ancient recipes and foods, stone tools and weapons, bizarre medicines, and lost technologies of all kinds. For different chapters of the book, I attended an authentic Roman banquet. I fired a giant medieval catapult and a medieval cannon. I performed ancient neurosurgery, and I got and gave my first tattoo, and so much more. I've never written a book that's been more of an adventure. Today's excerpts are about ancient Egypt. First, on making Egyptian bread and beer, just like King Tut would have eaten. Second, on 2 rogue scientists who made an actual Egyptian-style human mummy in modern times. Again, Dinner with King Tut comes out July 8th, but if you pre-order a hardcover now through my publisher, you will get 20% off. Just use the code SPOON at this website, bit.ly/dinnerwithkingtut. Again, that's bit.ly/dinnerwithkingtut, offer code SPOON. You can also find that link in the show notes or at samkeen.com. And as a bonus, if you pre-order anywhere, you get the first chapter early and can start reading right now. Just go to samkeen.com and click on the link near the top to fill out the form. Do it before this offer expires, and please spread the word to family members and friends. Pre-orders are vital for books. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy the excerpt.
From the most wretched servant to the most exalted prince, people in ancient Egypt ate bread and drank beer with every meal. These staples were so vital to their diet that, in Egyptian hieroglyphs, the combined symbols for bread and beer actually meant meal or sustenance. During pyramid construction, bakeries the size of football fields stood near the worker villages. Every morning, battalions of men and women would grind up bushels of emmer, the main grain eaten in Egypt, into flour on stone hand mills called querns. Still more bakers mixed and kneaded the dough, probably with their feet. To bake the bread, rather than waste time making thousands of mud ovens, crews used conical clay molds. They'd dig holes in the ground, fill them with glowing embers, drop the molds in upside down, plop some dough in, then cap each mold with a second one and heap hot ash over the top. The endless rows of these devices made the lot behind the baking huts look like giant egg cartons. Timing was critical. The glowing embers had to be ready the same time the dough was, and the bread had to finish just as the construction crews and other laborers were lining up for meals. Given the immense scale, there was a factory feel to the operation, and someone like Amun was as much a foreman as a baker, equally concerned with workflow and worker training as he was flour quality or seasoning. To learn the ins and outs of Egyptian bread, I make a trip to Los Angeles to visit Seamus Blackley, a computer programmer and self-described gastro-Egyptologist. He's been obsessed with Egypt ever since seeing his first mummy on Scooby-Doo as a child. Today, he's a graying redhead with bright blue eyes and a ponytail. Among the many fascinating lines on his resume, he invented the Xbox gaming system in a previous life. His company now does computational holography, he says. And if I tell you more, you'll have to sign a non-disclosure agreement. I don't press. Instead, I ask about the giant metal dinosaur skull sitting near the front door. Blackley tells me it's Cathy, the Acrocanthosaurus, a sort of mini T-Rex. Not only is it authentically life-sized, a yard long with porcelain teeth the size of ice cream cones, it's biomechanically accurate as well, with a linear actuator to provide thousands of pounds of bite force. Blackley's company built it for a television show to recreate a puncture wound found in an ancient fossil. Less historically accurately, a second show commissioned Cathy to chomp on a dummy human skull filled with red glop, just to see what would have happened if a dinosaur had ever snacked on one of us. Imagine putting a stick of dynamite in a jar of raspberry jam, and you get the idea. Blackley's first foray into heirloom food involved medieval European bread. My challenge to myself was to be as good at making bread as the average 12-year-old in the 12th century, he says. Egyptian bread was a logical next step, although at first he largely improvised. I made this bread with supposedly ancient yeast, and a lot of people asked questions on Twitter about its authenticity, he recalls. They basically said, "You're full of shit," including my wife. I wanted to be not so full of shit. So he reached out to an Egyptologist and a microbiologist for guidance and recruited some colleagues. I employ a lot of people who are chemists and such, so I have a nerd army I can call on. Eventually, he hopped on a plane to Egypt to collect yeast from ancient pottery, using sterile swabs and other microbiology equipment to gather samples. Friends also made him replicas of the conical bread molds, using representative clay. Finally, Blackley built a Pharaohic-era fire pit in his backyard to bake with. He even sourced acacia wood from Arizona for kindling, similar to what Egyptians used. It took a year of practice, he says, to make bread that doesn't suck. Archaeologists have documented roughly 40 different types of bread from Egypt's 5,000-year history. Everything from biscuits to baguettes to pitas. Some bakers even made loaves in fancy shapes: flowers, phalluses, fruit, obelisks, birds, cattle, crocodiles, gazelles, fish. Those breads would kill on the Great British Bake Off, Blackley says. For everyday meals, though, most people ate the conical bread. In his office, Blackley shows me his replica mold. It's scorched black and much heftier than I expect, 15 inches across and probably 20 pounds. As a treat, Blackley has also baked a loaf for me to sample. It's a foot wide and sand-colored with a springy crust. It consists of just a handful of ingredients: salt, yeast, coriander, emmer flour, and its blunted shape reminds me of NASA space capsules from the 1960s. Blackley apologizes for not making toppings for the bread, like leeks in beef tallow, which he says was an Egyptian favorite. He needn't have worried. It's hard to overemphasize how delicious this bread is. It's spongy and chewy, and has a scrumptious sourdough tang, with the coriander sneaking in late to tickle the tongue. It would draw raves in any New York or Paris bistro. And mind you, I'm eating a 2-day-old loaf warmed up in the company microwave. Fresh out of the mold, it would have been orgasmic. Blackley notes that bakers in ancient Egypt had strong incentives to cook well. Have you been to Giza and seen the pyramids? The blocks are a hell of a lot bigger than you'd think in the pictures. Bread was the primary currency used to pay those guys, and also their food. You wouldn't want to give the guys who could move those blocks a bad meal. Beyond bread, Egyptian laborers were paid in beer as well. 1 1/3 gallons daily, roughly 10 pints, which they happily sucked down given that temperatures on the hot sands could reach 130 degrees Fahrenheit. One scholar estimated that it took 231 million gallons of beer to build the largest pyramid. Even children drank beer, largely because the alcohol killed microbes and rendered it more sanitary than the water in rivers, also known as their sewers. Egyptian doctors also prescribed beer as medicine to remedy coughs, constipation, swollen eyes, and upset stomachs. Based on residues in ancient pots, amber or mahogany beers were probably the most common in Egypt, although records do list other varieties, such as celery, dark, date, iron, and sweet. As with bread, the Egyptians mostly brewed with emmer grains, along with some barley, which would have made their beers wheatier and creamier than modern varieties. The Egyptians did filter their beer, but it still would have had husks of depleted grains floating in it. So some people likely drank through reed straws to avoid a mouthful of chaff with their morning quaff. Sometimes the straws got quite elaborate. In the Caucasus, yard-long gold and silver straws have turned up. They were so ornate that archaeologists initially mistook them for scepters. Egyptian beer also lacked hops, so it wouldn't have had the bitter undertones of modern brews. Instead, it probably leaned more sour, in part due to the fruit flies that swarmed their open vats and introduced bacteria that convert alcohol into vinegar. Other microbes that produce sour taste might have wafted in as well. Some scholars have described Egyptian beer as alcoholic porridge or a sour barley milkshake. Hops never appeared in beer before the Middle Ages. After that, they became ubiquitous, even mandatory at times. Under penalty of law, you couldn't sell beer in some districts if it lacked hops. When Anchor Brewing in San Francisco made a batch of Egyptian-style beer in 1989, the brewmaster invited some guests in to observe the process. But when it came time to add hops, he made everyone turn around, feigned adding a handful, then pocketed them. He didn't want to risk anyone else getting fined or arrested for abetting the crime he was committing. Eager to sample the beer, I dug up a recipe online and began brewing a gallon myself. All beer starts with malted grains that have been germinated and dried. Brewers today dump these directly into hot water, but some scholars believe that ancient Egyptians performed another step first, forming the grains into crude offering loaves and gently baking them at a low temperature. Only then did they crumble the loaves into water, usually while reciting prayers. This created a symbolic connection between bread and beer, with one transforming into the other. Admittedly, my offering loaves don't look very appetizing, less like bread than birdseed patty cake together with wet sand. But they smell delicious coming out of the oven. I say my prayers, crumble them into a pot of water, and simmer them. This gives the enzymes in the grains a chance to break down the long-chain starch molecules inside into simple sugars. After 2 hours, I'm left with a pale white liquid, which turns brown when I add cardamom, cumin, rosemary, coriander, and cinnamon. Scholars don't know what exactly the Egyptians used to flavor beer, but all these spices were available to them. After a hard boil, I try a sip and coo with delight. It tastes like sugary oatmeal runoff. I decant this into a milk jug, then measure the ABV with a device called a refractometer, around 2.3%, probably typical for beer then. Depending on how watery they were, Egyptian brews could have reached 4% ABV, and adding fruits or other sugars could have boosted that to 8 or 9%. But in general, the Egyptians did not drink beer to get drunk. If they wanted to get smashed, they drank wine. To start the fermentation, I add a packet of yeast. Ancient brewers either added the yeasty foam from a previous batch as a starter, or else relied on wind-blown yeast or yeast from the skins of fruits they added for flavor. After a week of fermenting in my spare bathroom, the beer looks like muddy apple cider, with a 1/4 inch of sludge on the bottom. I sniff it, and the rush of bubbles instantly clears my sinuses. Then I sip. All I can taste at first is a smack of sour, a pow right in the kisser. Eventually, a little citrus emerges. But, sadly, none of the other spices come through. No rosemary, no cardamom, nothing. Still, those spices might be adding flavor even if I don't taste it. David Falk, an Egyptologist and amateur beer maker whose recipe I'm following, compares beer spices to the vanilla in ice cream. Falk once made a batch of ice cream without vanilla, which we normally don't think of as a dynamic taste, quite the opposite. But Falk says he immediately noticed its absence. The frozen sugar milk just tasted blah without it. The same goes for beer, he tells me. You need something in there to offset the blandness. Hidden flavors still contribute to taste. In all, the description of Egyptian beer as a sour barley milkshake didn't ring true to me. Mine tasted closer to kombucha, a perfect thirst quencher after a hot day piling up pyramid stones in the sun.
Did you know 39% of teen drivers admit to texting while driving? Even scarier, those who text are more likely to speed and run red lights. Shockingly, 94% know it's dangerous but do it anyway. As a parent, you can't always be in the car, but you can stay connected to their safety with Greenlight Infinity's driving reports. Monitor their driving habits, see if they're using their phone, speeding, and more. These reports provide real data for meaningful conversations about safety. Plus, with weekly updates, you can track their progress over time. Help keep your teens safe. Sign up for Greenlight Infinity at greenlight.com/podcast.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/ARTS. Just go to Indeed.com/ARTS right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Cultures throughout history have mummified their dead, and a handful still do today. But Egyptian mummies remain the most iconic. Unfortunately, the Egyptians wrote down virtually nothing about their embalming process. This leaves experimental archaeology as one of the few avenues available for understanding mummification, and several practitioners have indeed recreated mummies in modern times. In most cases, they work with animals, but a few intrepid souls have mummified human beings, most famously when Bob Breyer and Ron Wade did so in 1994. Wade grew up wanting to be a mortician like his father. After a stint as a medic in the Vietnam War, he became an anatomist and eventually the head of Maryland's State Anatomy Board. Breyer also has training in anatomy, but is an Egyptologist by training and passion. He's accumulated so many books on Egypt over his life that he rents a second apartment just to accommodate them. Breyer and Wade selected their mummy from the pool of people in Baltimore who donated their bodies to science. Ultimately, they settled on a 76-year-old Caucasian man who died of a heart attack. His identity remains secret, but a bit crassly, Wade nicknamed him E.M. Balm. For authenticity's sake, Breyer and Wade used replicas of Pharaonic-era tools and materials, including linen wraps, an oddly wide wooden embalming table, and copper and obsidian blades, although they quickly abandoned the copper ones, which couldn't cut flesh well. Before starting on their mummy, they practiced one important step on other cadavers, extracting the brain. Instead of using full cadavers for this, they obtained some decapitated heads left over from a medical school's plastic surgery class. They were looking a little weird, Breyer recalls. They had facelifts and such. From the scant references, Breyer knew that Egyptian embalmers removed the brain by inserting a hooked rod through the nostrils, but the details were vague. Breyer and Wade first tried scooping the brain out with such a rod, but the tissue proved too soft and wouldn't come out. They finally took to squirting water up the cadaver's nose, then used the rod to whisk the brain into a slurry. After that, it poured right out. Like a milkshake, Breyer says. A strawberry milkshake, to be exact. Skills honed, the duo began making their mummy in May 1994. The first step involved removing his organs. Different organs met different fates in Egypt. Unclear about the purpose of the brain, embalmers typically threw it away. The heart, in contrast, was left in situ. It was considered the seat of all thinking, emotion, and intelligence. Abdominal organs were carefully extracted and preserved. Following this protocol, Breyer and Wade made a 3.5-inch incision in the cadaver's abdomen and removed the spleen, liver, gallbladder, lungs, and 22 feet of intestines. Given their size, extracting the liver and lungs required some creative geometry and determined squeezing. The most difficult part involved detaching the lungs from the heart while working blind inside such a tiny hole. With the organs removed, the pair cleaned the abdomen with palm wine and myrrh, then stuffed frankincense into the skull. This was an important ritual step to prepare the body for the afterlife, and also helped kill microbes and mask bad smells. Ancient embalmers used other sacred substances as well, often imported from Europe and Asia at great cost: pistachio resin, beeswax, castor oil. Ramses the Great's mummy had peppercorns from India shoved up his nose. Next, Breyer and Wade dehydrated the body using natron, a mineral of equal parts salt and baking soda that forms naturally in Egyptian wadis, or dry gullies. Like a sponge, natron sucks the moisture out of flesh, leaving it too dry to support bacteria, maggots, beetles, and other putrefying agents. The leftover tissue is essentially jerky. Fully committed to authenticity, Breyer dug the natron himself in Egypt, and recalls that sneaking hundreds of pounds of unidentified white powder through customs at JFK Airport was one of the more ticklish aspects of the project. Luckily, he was traveling with a film crew and could hide the powder in suitcases amid their equipment. In their lab, Breyer and Wade placed the mummy's spleen, lungs, liver, and intestines into bowls and covered them with natron. They also packed 29 linen bags of the powder into the body's empty torso, laid the body on top of 211 more pounds, and dumped 583 additional pounds over it. They kept the body in Wade's old office, with the heat cranked up to 104 degrees Fahrenheit and dehumidifiers running night and day to simulate Egyptian air. Over the next 5 weeks, the natron on top turned crusty and brown from absorbing bodily juices, forcing Breyer and Wade to crack through it with an iron rod. Today, Breyer remembers the odor as acrid but not unpleasant, although news reports at the time say he and Wade donned surgical masks against the smell. Regardless, the sight of the body beneath thrilled Breyer. As it dries, the skin of mummies tightens and shrivels, especially on the face and scalp. The lips retract to reveal the teeth, and skin, with less melanin, turns brown-yellow. Breyer always wondered whether those changes resulted from the immediate mummification process or from several thousand years of weathering in Egypt's arid climate. One glance at his mummy, and Breyer knew the answer, even after 5 weeks. "He looked just like Ramses the Great," he recalls, with leathery skin, a beaky nose, and wispy hair sticking up. The embalming process, not time, made the iconic mummies we know today. Beyond changing the body's appearance, the dehydration process left the limbs as stiff as tree branches and dropped its weight from 188 pounds to just 79. 31 pounds of that represented the removal of organs. The organs drying in the bowls withered as well, which helped explain another mystery of Egyptian mummification. As other archaeologists have noted, embalmers typically placed the organs in so-called canopic jars, funerary vessels with slim necks, so slim that it seemed impossible to fit the larger organs inside. But the natron shrunk them down enough to slip right in. After removing him from the natron, Breyer and Wade gave Mr. Balm a full-body massage with lotus, cedar, and palm oils, another step that, while important ritualistically, also had pragmatic benefits, restoring flexibility to the joints, making the mummy easier to handle. This accomplished, they wrapped the body in linen bandages. Embalmers in ancient times started with the hands and feet, wrapping each digit separately, then proceeded to the arms, legs, and torso. The penis was individually wrapped as well, or, if embarrassingly shriveled, a codpiece of stiff linen was bound in place. At this point, they let the mummy dry for 3 more months in the arid office, which dropped its weight to 51 pounds. Afterward, they added several more layers of wrappings. In between the layers, they slipped magic amulets and scraps of papyrus with spells on them, a common practice in ancient times. For the past 3 decades, the mummy has been lying in a metal casket in Maryland, stored at room temperature. Breyer and Wade have partially unwrapped it twice to check for rot, but found nothing amiss. "He's dead and well," says Breyer. Among archaeologists, Breyer and Wade's experiment proved controversial. One critic fumed, "It's macabre and tasteless, and I don't think there's a great deal of scientific value." Less emotionally, another pointed out that donating your body to science should not be a blank check for any kind of experimentation that researchers dream up. It's a fair point. Breyer and Wade, however, deny any implication that they mistreated the body. "We're treating this man like a king," Wade said at the time. Breyer adds, "In 50 years, he's going to be in a lot better shape than I will be." Plus, it's not true that the experiment lacked scientific value. It revealed much about Egyptian mummification that we simply didn't know before. What blades embalmers used, how to remove the brain, how much natron was needed, even why embalming tables were so wide back then, 4 full feet, to accommodate the huge pile of natron necessary to dry the flesh. Given all the controversy, few modern archaeologists have dared embalm human beings, but several have mummified animals, a practice common in ancient Egypt. For some hands-on experience in this realm, I decide to seek guidance from the world's leading expert on animal mummies, Salima Ikram, an Egyptologist at the American University in Cairo. She suggests I mummify a fish, so I pick up a half-pound red snapper from the grocery store with the head, tail, and eyes intact. I start by making some bootleg natron, blending 6 cups of baking soda and salt with a few cups of water. I dry the resulting paste in my oven until it resembles chalk, then crumble it into powder. Next, I wash the fish inside and out with white wine, which foams up as I scrub every cranny, including under the tongue. After patting everything dry, I pack the interior with tiny linen gift bags of natron, set it on a bed of more natron in a casserole dish, and heap another few pounds atop. Alarmingly, I can smell fishy odors through the natron the next day. But it doesn't smell rancid, more like parboiled fish. 6 days later, when I unearth the snapper to check on it, I get another scare. Little black flecks in the powder. Are they bugs? Putrid tissue? I don't know. But the flesh shows no sign of rot. It looks like smoked trout, tan and stiff. Considering that it's been sitting unrefrigerated for nearly a week during a sultry Washington, D.C. summer, it's in darn good shape. After 18 days, the snapper is half its original weight. Following Ikram's protocol, I massage the flesh with castor, lettuce, and myrrh oils to restore pliability. The oils turn the fish an attractive gold color, but do little on the flexibility front. When I try bending the body, I cringe to hear the skin and muscles crack. Several tears appear. Perhaps I dried the fish too long, or perhaps mammal flesh absorbs oil more readily. Nevertheless, the process impresses me overall. After wrapping my mummy fish in linen, I place it on my shelf, and it's still there today. Last I checked, the eyes and skin were intact, and there were no signs of decay or untoward odors. It was shockingly easy, then, to turn even fish, an animal proverbial for smelling horrible, into an inoffensive relic. No wonder the Egyptians considered mummification a sacred, even magical process.
I hope you enjoyed the excerpt. Again, Dinner with King Tut comes out July 8th. If you think you'll pick up a copy, you might as well get a discount. bit.ly/dinnerwithkingtut, offer code SPOON. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you in the fall with new episodes.
Did you know 39% of teen drivers admit to texting while driving? Even scarier, those who text are more likely to speed and run red lights. Shockingly, 94% know it's dangerous but do it anyway. As a parent, you can't always be in the car, but you can stay connected to their safety with Greenlight Infinity's driving reports. Monitor their driving habits, see if they're using their phone, speeding, and more. These reports provide real data for meaningful conversations about safety. Plus, with weekly updates, you can track their progress over time. Help keep your teens safe. Sign up for Greenlight Infinity at greenlight.com/podcast.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/ARTS. Just go to Indeed.com/ARTS right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.